With MLB The Show 23 less than 2 weeks away, the team has announced their changes and additions to franchise mode, and I've got to say, the mode looks really exciting this year. In today's video, we'll be going over all of those additions in depth, so make sure to like and subscribe for more MLB The Show 23 content. All of these additions have been put into not just franchise, but March to October as well, if that's more your cup of tea. We'll start with some of the smaller additions, such as the Shohei Ohtani rule being added to the game, where two-way players can hit and pitch in the same game. Along with that, the universal DH for the American and National League is fully into effect within franchise mode. The new postseason format has also been added to franchise mode. Over the last 2 years, we've had 6 teams per league make the playoffs, and that has now been implemented into franchise mode. We have new logic for trading and player values as well. The logic has significantly improved from MLB The Show 22 to 23 to have much smarter and realistic trades based on the value of certain players with their age, ratings, potential, position, and contract. With there being a larger playoff field, there needs to be new logic in terms of trading, particularly at the deadline. MLB The Show has taken that into account and has updated the logic based on the new playoff system. Along with that, you'll see small minor league changes to make things a little bit better, and you're also going to see some other added things, including the competitive balance tax. The MLB draft is now scheduled during the All-Star break, just as it is in real life. With the scheduling changes, you will now play against every team, just like the new MLB schedule, and the draft lottery has been implemented into the game as well. By far the biggest change to franchise mode this year really has to do with the draft and scouting, which is what I want to spend most of today's video on. If you guys know me and have been around the channel for a while, you know how important the draft is to me. In order to win a championship in really any sport, you need to know how to be able to build through the draft and develop your players. I really like the idea of following young guys through their amateur careers, eventually seeing them up into professionals where they hopefully develop into really good players and see their entire careers unfold before they eventually retire. I will say, drafting in MLB The Show has felt pretty much the same over the last few years, and it's gotten repetitive and boring. However, that is no longer the case in MLB The Show 23. With an enhanced scouting and drafting system, it really feels like you're drafting for a major league team, and I'm really excited to go into detail right here about the big-time draft changes for MLB The Show 23. Starting with the prospect generation logic, the prospects in the game feel way more realistic. They have accurate ages in terms of what class they are in, whether they are a high schooler, a JUCO player, or a college upperclassman. Their ratings generally line up with their age. A senior in college is a lot more likely to be MLB ready than a high school senior. Scouting in MLB The Show 23 feels a lot more interesting and detailed, while it also feels more important as well. You will have 3 open slots for your scouts who are asking for much more realistic salaries as opposed to what scouts would have asked for in a prior MLB The Show game. And if you look at the right, you can see what their strengths and weaknesses are, which you should keep in mind based on which positions and which types of players they scout. You'll be able to have each scout look at either one player or one position group per week. You want to be smart with how you utilize this, because if you look at one position group, you can get a lot of information with multiple players. If you have your scout only looking at one player, you won't look at as many different guys, but you'll get more information for that specific player. If there's one guy who you're really curious about, you should have one scout really take a focus on him, and you can really find out the skill set of that player. Each player has an organized player card that gives you all of the necessary information you may want to look for before you scout or draft them. You'll be able to look at their potential, overall, age, class, etc. When you click into a player's player card, you will find even more information. Once you're inside a player's player card, you're going to be greeted by a lot of information. You'll be able to take a look at all of their attributes and what their possible ratings range could be, but you'll also get a future outlook of their attributes as well. This gives you a really good indication of what type of player you could be drafting. As you take a look at the left side of your screen, you'll see this player's scouting progress is only at 10%. As you continue to scout him and that bar fills up in the green, the ratings range will decrease. You will have a more narrow view of what their ratings could be. So, for example, most of his ratings are within a 20-number increment. His contact against righties is between 63 and 82. As you continue to scout him, that window is going to become much more narrow, and you're going to have a better idea of what that rating would be. Below the scouting bar, you'll see the player's interest in signing. Signing bonus and whatnot actually matters. You'll have to take into account how much bonus money the player wants with their draft slot, and you'll have to make some tough decisions and may not be able to sign all of your prospects. The players who you do not sign will be entered within the draft a few years later. You will also get a look at their medical exams as well. In June, players will have the opportunity to take a physical. Players can decline the opportunity to take the physical if they wish. If they do, you can find out whether they are healthy or injured, and if they do take the physical, they are guaranteed at least 70% of their bonus money. Some players will do the physical while others will not, and those players will be more of a mystery in terms of their medical. Just because you scout a player's rating or potential does not mean it's always going to be accurate. Some players will be diamonds in the rough. They will outperform your scouted numbers, and some players will be busts, and they will not be as good. Obviously, your higher draft picks are more likely to be better prospects, but unlike previous MLB The Show games, not every top prospect ends up being good. A lot of times, you have highly drafted players who don't even end up making the major leagues. You're also likely to see more late-round picks become good players. The talent throughout the draft class is a lot more varied, which makes your scouting information really, really important. There is also now fog of war injury logic, which goes back to what I was talking about a second ago with players' physicals. In June, they can choose to take a physical, which guarantees them 70% of their bonus money, but it also could reveal that they have an underlying injury, which could cause their stock to decrease. Again, if the player declines the physical, that's where the whole fog of war part comes in. You have no clue whether or not that player is healthy, so it could change your evaluation based on the unknown. As I mentioned just a moment ago, the more you scout the player, the range of their ratings decreases. Here's a player who's been 10% scouted compared to a player who has been fully scouted. You'll notice the range in rating and potential has strongly decreased, meaning that you have a better understanding of how good the player is right now, along with what his long-term potential could be. Each player also has an interest bar. Once you scout them enough, this shows how interested they would be signing with your team, and you may have to adjust their bonus slot value based on if you draft them and how interested they are, which again goes back to the strategy of using your bonus money smartly in order to get as many players who you drafted to sign with your team. So with that, you have done all of your scouting, you've made it to the All-Star break, and it's time to hop into the draft. Immediately, you'll notice that the draft queue looks a lot different, and I've got to say it looks a lot cleaner than it did in the past. You may notice a clock on the top of your screen. The CPU teams will have 10 seconds to make their picks, while you, the user, will have 4 minutes. And the interesting thing here is that you cannot pause the draft at all. So it really feels like real life because you got to be quick when making your decisions. You can move players up and down your draft board just to keep things organized for yourself and try to give yourself a better understanding once you get to your pick of who your top targets are going to be. For some of the top picks, as well as your own draft picks, the game will have a cool little graphic to show off the players along with some of their immediate ratings. The game will not do this for all of the picks because, well, I don't think you want to be on the draft screen for 10 hours, but it is pretty cool seeing the top prospects really get their own visual rather than just simulating and reading a name. So with that, you are on the clock and you have 4 minutes to make your selection. Again, you have a lot of information to keep an eye on when looking at somebody's player card. You got to keep an eye on the interest tab along with their bonus demand. If you want to get somebody with a bigger bonus demand, you're going to have to be a little bit smarter with how you use the rest of your draft picks. But on the other hand, if you draft somebody with a smaller bonus asking price, you may be drafting a slightly worse prospect in the first round, but you'll also have more flexibility for the rest of the draft. You also got to keep an eye on the physicals. This player, for example, not only took his physical, but has a low injury risk, meaning there is no reason to be worried about his medicals. You have now made your selections and you have gone through your draft class, but you still have some decisions to make. As you can see on the top left portion of your screen, you only have 21 days until the deadline, and again on the top left shows your bonus money that you can use. A lot of that is going to be used on your high draft picks, so you got to be smart with which players you sign because you're probably not going to be able to afford everybody. You're going to have to prioritize the players who you really like. And again, you're going to have to keep an eye on the interest bar because players with lower interests may ask for more money compared to their draft slot, or they may be a little bit stingier in terms of negotiations. So you're going to have to be strategic with ultimately which players you sign. As for the guys you don't end up signing, one of the cool features is that they will be back in the draft class in a couple of years. You won't know the exact ratings and potentials of your draft picks until the signing period is over, and then after that, you'll be able to get a look at your draft picks and ultimately see how well your scouting department did and which players who you plan on building around your team for the future. So that's what drafting looks like in MLB The Show 23 franchise. I think San Diego Studios did a great job of totally revamping the draft, making it way more fun and immersive. And overall, I think they're doing a really good job with franchise mode, and I'm excited to get my hands on the game in a couple of weeks. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more MLB The Show 23 franchise content. That'll do it for me. Peace out.